All right, Johnny Savage. Man, we've been wanting to do this for a while, and I'm stoked that you called me and you're like, "Come on, let's go!" And we drove down or up to Virginia today. So, man, the book is awesome. Lost in the Stream. Johnny wrote this book about a survival story at sea, and I've talked to quite a few people that have gone through similar stories with, and I wanted to hear yours. And I know you told this story quite a few times now, and what you're doing is awesome. And yeah, man, just want to thank you for doing this because I know it's not easy, but you're doing it for a very good reason. And I think people need to hear your story. We talked about it earlier. Complacency is something that can kill you fast on the water. So, but man, yeah, tell us a little bit about yourself and how you got into the boating industry and all that. Let's start from square one, man.
Well, it's kind of ironic that I even like to fish because when I was a kid, I was like real little and a toddler. My parents took me to see Jaws, and I remember watching Jaws between the seats of the movie theaters, terrified,
Yeah.
and I never really saw the end of it, so I thought that thing was still out there. So I remember the first time that we would with the spot run in September, we'd go to the pier and catch a bunch of spot. My dad would corn them, put them up for the winter. And I'll never forget the first time I sat in the middle of the pier, absolutely terrified, like peeking through the cracks, and I wouldn't get near
for Jaws.
Yeah, because he was down there somewhere. And I guess really the fear was broken. Went to the beach with some friends when I was probably in kindergarten, and they all ran to the water. Next thing I know, I looked around, I'm standing in the ocean. I'm like, oh, okay, it's not that bad. So then going on, and then I guess when I was probably about 12 years old, started gill netting in the Upper Currituck Sound, and getting a little money from doing that. My dad would pass it my way, and it's like, whoa, this fishing thing could be just pretty cool. Put some money in my pocket.
Yeah,
I'd love
yeah.
to do it, but I could also make money doing it. And years later, I would end up starting to work on the head boats out of Rudy Inlet, and
Gill netting.
gill netting is where I started.
Yep.
And then, I guess when I was 16 is when I started working on the head boats.
Cool.
And you want to talk about a lesson in problem solving?
Oh yeah,
Holy
well,
cow,
and put under a situation fast. Like at least that's what I remember when I was with Cito. It was kind of like, all right, here's a job, good luck, figure it out.
That's right. Yeah, it'd be like the weekends, and like one of the boats would be like super crowded with like 80 people on it, and all the rods were junk because it was like the backup boat, and I'd be put on there with a brand new mate, and be like, get figured out. But that captain was a great guy. I mean, he was tough on me, but he was like, I want you to be the best.
Yeah.
And that always stuck. But I guess really, with where we are now, going back a little bit, like with my love for fishing, of course, my dad started me fishing, but then I had a next door neighbor, and he was lieutenant commander of SEAL Team 2. Actually, he was CO of the UDT 21 prior, and, just took me fishing all the time, and really helped kind of cultivate that love and seeing the detail, because he ties his own flies. And I remember I would just sit there and watch him do this stuff and just absolutely amazed.
I remember reading in your book, you're saying like you got into that, and then as soon as somebody took you out and you caught that first mahi or wahoo, that was when things changed a little bit in your life, right?
Yep. That's when I told my mom. I guess I don't remember it, but I told my mom, like, I want to do this one day. And then when I started doing it, she was like, yeah, you told me that's what you wanted to do. So just been, man, so fortunate over the years to work for some great captains when I was a mate, got to travel and fish a lot of different places. And then I've just been blessed to have some great owners that I've run boats for. And guy I'm running a boat for now, running a 60 Hatters. He's a great husband.
So you're still continuing to run boats. Awesome. Yeah. Everybody I talk to that is still, they've done it their whole life, and I always ask myself, like, is it sustainable? And they're like, yeah. I mean, you travel a lot, but you get to do something you love. You learn a lot on the water, and I don't know. I'm kind of jealous.
But you hit a good point there. Is as far as it being sustainable, it's very difficult to maintain a relationship at times because it's not like you're going to like the boring places of the world. You're going to places that are like party spots, basically. And so it does take a lot of self-control when you're in that kind of situation and you have a family. And that's what I, especially with this accident, it really made me kind of think a lot. It's like, I mean, I love doing this, but, I went to school, I got a degree. And
What was your degree in?
my degree's in environmental health and safety, and then I have a concentration in an area that's called industrial hygiene. And when after the accident, when I went back to college,
Mhm.
working on my master's, that's where my focus was because I just want to help people.
Yeah. Still to this day.
Yep, still doing it to this day. I'm the safety manager for the Hampton Roads area with Virginia Paving. So get to do both, man. It's like it's just awesome. Get to go fishing and follow suit with my career.
So
Otherwise,
so tell us, I mean, I from what I remember reading, you ended up down in down in Florida, Palm
Mhm.
Beach, and working in and out of there, the Keys, correct? And then you got the job with Eric,
Yeah.
Captain Eric.
So back in that time frame, 80s, 90s, it was like the core to sport fishing was Palm Beach.
Mhm.
It's kind of spread out now, but every winter that's the core. And I mean, there's some of the guys that I work with down there, other mates. I mean, they are like crushing it now,
Yeah.
and then the names that you read about. But then it was the best in the world would show up for a handful of jobs at Sailfish Marina, and I was fortunate that when I went down there, we got a job, and I think part of that was building up kind of like my pride in a way, if that makes sense.
Yeah, yeah.
And we aren't
Getting a
careful
good
with it.
reputation.
Reputation, I think, is everything
Mhm.
in the industry, and I know that I always tried to. I don't know. I tried not to get into the drug side of it as much as like some of the other folks. And like there was like always tried to have like a line there,
Yeah.
and and some of my buddies have gone down that road, and
I've seen a lot.
yeah,
I'm good friends with a lot of guys up in like Moorhead and Beaufort. And unfortunately it's gotten better, but at one point it was like 50% of the people just going off the deep end, it was just that lifestyle and
exactly.
and it's you learn a lot from that lifestyle. Might take Unfortunately it might take a serious accident like a couple boats I know guys just falling passed out, you know, drunk is or on drugs and ran that boat up aground. It happens, but it's
And you say the lifestyle, and I think that's something that because I mean, from the outside looking in, it looks like this great thing, and it is great. But when it's also lonely. I mean,
yeah.
you're with a bunch of your buddies all the time, but there's a core to you that's like is lonely. Even though, so what do? You sometimes you just party to fill the gap.
Yeah. Yeah. Is that what you caught yourself doing?
I was going down that road, yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. Actually, that year prior to the accident in Mexico, I remember, uh, like not wanting to go to bed because I was afraid I might miss something, and
I'm getting better, but I was like that too. Yeah, you feel like you're missing out on something, or I always feel like, oh man, I should have been there to meet that guy or whatever. It could have been a good connection, but the grass ain't always greener.
no.
It's
And I think that's where it got to. I mean, as much as and if you've seen the industry, and we're a pretty competitive bunch, and we want to sack each up, either up.
is it a big ego in it?
Yeah, big egos. Put more fish on the dock, whatever. But as strong as that was during the day, I want to say it. I get to the point where at nighttime it was like the competition, and if this makes sense, was maybe a little bit more
Yeah.
because this was more personal.
Hmm.
And and sadly enough, back then, Hacienda del Mar, Mexico, was like a key place where we would go. And I remember in the mornings that the taxi cabs would be lined up in front of the hotel to take girls back to town.
Hmm.
And I mean, it was
Big money too.
yeah. And
Yeah.
that's where you get caught up in it too, because you're working for some of the wealthiest people in the country, and you get caught up in that whole materialistic thing. And I think that was something that hit me in the water.
Did this new job with Captain Eric kind of straighten you up a little bit? And because I know from what I remember reading, you were pretty nervous working with them. There was a lot on your plate, and you wanted to you didn't want to fail.
I didn't.
Yeah.
And I knew because of the situation that this was going to be, the owner and his wife and his daughter would be on the boat, and we'd be going to Mexico, Belize, and Guatemala. So it was more of a family environment. So I knew that this isn't. I knew I was going to have to tone it back.
Yeah, yeah. And did you catch yourself doing that a little?
Yeah, because I didn't like you said I didn't want to fail.
Yeah.
And Eric was he's such a great guy.
Tell me about
great guy.
Captain Eric.
He is a
seemed
cool dude, man.
I know. And the more I kept on reading, I was just like, he just sounds like that funny Aussie that's just got the heavy accent. Seemed like a very, from what I read, kind of laid back though. Like didn't during the whole accident, it seemed like he didn't panic much.
No, there's never a moment of panic.
Yeah.
Very matter of fact, it's just, it's a job, we got to live.
Yeah, yeah. So you guys just became, I mean, did you know him before this, or you just walked on the boat? And
I did not. So a little backstory. So I showed up that year to Sailfish Marina, went to work on a boat called Major Motion with Jimmy Gardner. I mean, dude's freaking awesome. He taught me so much related to staying on top of the fish, especially with live bait sail fishing. And then that boat was listed for sale. So when Jimmy told me it was listed, he's like, and it was after our main season there in Palm Beach, and he was like, I understand if you got to find another job. And so I had mentioned something to a captain from here named Gary Richardson, and like, hey man, I guess the boat's for sale. I'm gonna have to look for something. I'd like to get back to Mexico if I can. Within a few days, Gary's like, hey, look, I got something for you.
is that when you got the job there?
And then I went up and met Eric, and I was like, this dude is freaking cool. and the neat thing about it too was, he was, well, for back then, I mean, it's like super old school now, but he was old school type, like Dacron type stuff. And I wasn't used to this. So he taught me so much related to Dacron. It was funny. I was in the tackle shop a couple weeks ago, and they're doing holocore loops. And I'm like, I'll come back. I'll show you some of these old Dacron tricks that I learned from him. It's like the endless loop. That's one of them.
What year was this? How old were you?
So I was in my mid 20s. It was 1998 when the accident happened. So that particular year was the 1997 winter. That after Christmas I'd gone to Palm Beach.
So you're pretty young.
Yeah, and the boat that I worked on the year before, that didn't come over to Palm Beach. It was on the west coast of Florida.
And what kind of boat was it again? I've never heard. It was hold on, something silver. What the heck was it called?
The Anhinga.
Yeah. What was the name of
Jim Smith?
Jim Smith. That's right. Yeah.
So that particular Jim Smith was originally built for Dick Moroso, high performance automotive parts, and so he wanted a fast boat. And this boat was known for its speed, and that was even when it was built. It had 892s in it.
Okay.
When I worked on it, it had 10-cylinder man, so it was even like that much faster. But I mean, I'd always wanted to work on a Jim Smith because they were known for being fast boats.
Where were they built out of?
In Florida, in the Stewart area.
I don't know. I've never heard of Jim Smith. Yeah. I know all the boats up in the Carolinas, but not many down there. Well, sport fishes at least. Sounds like a badass boat.
Yeah, it was there. Yeah, then there, John Vance ended up taking it over after Jim Smith passed away, and it was really cool that to get back and to talk to John Vance afterwards. And it's not just John, but the like Paul Mann and John Bayless and because this was such a big thing to hit the community, and they want to know about where they're trying to figure out where the failure was. And to tell you the truth, I don't think it would have mattered. What it was. I mean, just it was the power of that wave that took us out.
Well, let's break it down. I mean, I've heard a lot of these stories, and everyone's it's different in its own way. But you guys, you're taking the boat from you actually left from Key West, correct?
Yes.
From Key West to Cancun. That's where you're headed.
Mm-hmm.
And you guys hit a rogue wave.
Mm-hmm.
Tell me about the day though. Like when you guys left, what was the weather like? What was the vibes? Were you guys excited? Or were you kind of?
Oh yeah. It's you're focusing on. I got a big crossing, so you're kind of going through your steps, thinking about what you need, having those discussions. So one of the discussions we had that morning is should we take the Apirl and life raft out and put them in the cockpit, and then we were kind of complacent there and not to put the blame on either one of us because we both made the decision. So we're like, no, let's just keep it inside the salon because back then, typically, we were one of the few boats that could make the crossing in a day.
Mm-hmm.
Most boats, it took 2 days. We had the speed and we had the fuel.
Mm-hmm.
So at nighttime is when we're typically scared. So that's when we want to make sure we have everything out, everything staged. And so yeah, let's just leave it inside so we don't have to clean it when we get there.
Yeah.
With these safety equipment. The key safety equipment, and that just that night before, typical deal. Been out drinking, probably So the marina staff, we were staged at Oceanside. They go home at like 11 o'clock. There's tarpon swimming all over the place in there. You aren't allowed to fish for them. So obviously, once they were gone, it was like time to go tarpon fishing. And so it was tarpon fishing, and I'll never forget. Before I went fishing, I had called my dad and told him like, "Look, I'll call you tomorrow from Mexico." He's like, "What?" I'm like, "Yeah, we can make it in a day."
That's awesome.
And so that was that last call that I had made before getting underway the next morning. And yeah, so just drinking
Yeah.
the night before. So, in this community that I've been fortunate to be around, I mean, they don't do that. So it was like I set myself up for failure, dehydrate myself the night before, and then like getting 3 hours of sleep that night. But excited the next morning to get there, get it done.
Was this one of your first big jobs? Like, taking a boat from Key West to
No, I'd done it before.
Okay. It wasn't okay.
Yeah.
So you're almost
Just
confident, having a good time.
it was just another day going to work.
Yeah. And when I read it, I was so confused because, like, I mean, it sounded like it was the perfect day, pretty 2 to 3 foot swell, right? Flat, calm. I remember you even mentioning that it was kind of glassy.
Yeah. So you mentioned that about the boats earlier, and different boats, dude, like Carolina boats, awesome head sea boats.
Yeah. Yep.
Jim Smith's, they just eat up a following sea.
Every boat's got its compromise for different,
And so that's what we had. We had that long rolling 2 to 3 foot groundswell, which I mean, perfect for that boat.
So then what the heck happened, man? I'm sorry to interrupt, but I've heard so many stories about rogue waves and all this. And I want to imagine, like, visually see, like, what did you see? Like, what the hell? I mean, does it just come up like a damn tsunami and you're like, holy shit, what is this?
I don't even know how to, I'm to the point now in my life where this thing has rocked my world.
Yeah.
Pretty intense.
Mm-hmm.
And I've accepted not to try to figure it out.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know what happened. I don't know what caused it, but for us, it wasn't like we were like climbing this mountain and dropping off. It was like we were just running along. It's not like, because sometimes when we have a hurricane ground swell, when we're going up swell, our engines will, RPM down from the strain.
Yeah.
And it wasn't like that. We were just running. I mean, like that we had stopped, and Eric was in the process of pushing up, and most of us, we have the same, I guess, action as we push up.
Mm-hmm.
And so didn't notice anything different. It was just like going off a cliff. So I don't know if maybe something happened on the bottom. So we were pretty close to a ledge right there where it drops off. Where she went down was about 1,000 fathoms or 600 feet deep.
Damn.
But yeah, I try not to dwell on that part. But there was a lot of healing through writing the book because, number one, there's not a whole lot of people that have seen these things. They don't have a whole lot of information on them. I mean, I have some stuff in the book related to the first one that was recorded. But one of the things that I noticed doing the research is, like, watching documentaries, is the guys that saw one. I mean, some salty dudes are rocked.
Yeah.
Like, there was documentaries where they interviewed the captain, but the captain wasn't on the bridge at the time. Totally different demeanor.
Yeah.
So it's just, the power of that thing is just, it's like it's a monster.
It scares the shit out of me because it doesn't matter how many hours you've had out in the ocean, how skilled you are. Like, stuff like that scares me. I'm always terrified at night when we're running out to go fish in the morning. Like, is there a log right there that's going to hit me hard? I think what makes you the best captain and best waterman all around is how do you react to those situations or prevent them. Well, I take that back. You can't prevent it. Maybe you can. I don't know. I don't like. Can you prevent a rogue wave? Probably not. But it's can your preparation before you leave. And thinking worst case scenario. That's for me. I always think worst case scenario. When I got divers in the water, like, okay, worst case scenario, what could happen right now? Always in the back of my mind.
That's huge.
Yeah.
And so, like, not only, of course, being a safety guy, by education, kind of that's where my mind would always go, and because we do have to do like drills and stuff like that. But for the years fishing out of here, so we would have back when boats weren't that fast, 23 knots, you were getting it. Running 60 miles, I had a lot of time to think. So rather than just be idle, a lot of times when I would be laying there, everything was rigged because we were fishing 7 days a week. I would run scenarios through my head, just what you're talking about. Like, if this happened, what would I do? If this happened, what would I do? And the day it happened, there was no panic. It was time to go to work.
Yeah.
And I think if we all did that, I think it would make us better watermen. And that's the thing that this scares me a little bit, is, there's captains now that don't even go in their engine room.
No, there's also people that are buying boats that shouldn't own a boat.
Yeah.
Well,
So,
we're trying to fix that.
and it's that day, that when that day comes, you're responsible for people's lives.
Absolutely.
And I've never taken that lightly.
Yeah. Yeah. No, like I said, when I read the book, it was you get very detailed into like how you felt, and you kept on mentioning that that you felt like you failed that day,
Mhm.
but in a way, I didn't think you did. I mean, I don't know. It kind of made me upset that you kept on saying that. I don't know why, but then you turned it around right at the end there. Can you just tell us about like what was going through your mind after this, as soon as that happened? Because I didn't necessarily tell that there was panic mode, but at the same time, though, the boat's going down. Like we got to figure this shit out fast.
Mhm.
So like, what was that feeling once once the boat started going down?
So initially, when we came off the wave and she hit, and I saw the crack going across the bow deck, and saw like the separation up there.
Mhm.
My first, I mean, even though I saw what it happened and I heard it happen with it breaking apart, there was part of me that still expected to feel the ride up.
Yeah.
But then the reality was, no, she's going down, and her, basically she's turned into a big scoop, and it's going to happen. So that's when I turned to Eric, and she's going down. And then there was that pause with when he went to the radios for the Mayday, and they were already dead. Then it was like, go to work. That was the mindset.
Uh-huh.
No, just go to work. We got to live. And that's when it was like with the life jackets. And man, I tell you what, I was struggling and yanking and pulling. And just that moment where, when I looked over the side, and I saw that, because the life jackets were off on the port side, and she was listening to her port. And as I saw that water come up to where like the little, the top of the fly bridge, it was like, this part's done. Not going to be able to get, the life jackets aren't coming out.
How fast was this?
The boat, she was down within a couple minutes.
Holy shit.
Yeah, it was, and that's the other side of it. So a lot of times our mindset is thinking about, especially like a lot of wood composite. You think that you're going to have time because that stuff is a buoyant type material, but you also got these great big huge metal anchors or weights that are sitting in the engine room that are going to take you down too. And once that bulkhead is compromised,
It's done.
yeah, and that's really what we experienced with that. And so it was dead set work. I mean, that was the mindset. We gotta get what we can and try to do it as quick as we can. And that's why Eric, as soon as the radios were dead, abort. Let me go to my next step, which is he is dropping down the ladder. And then he went to try to get the Apirl life raft, which, and just, there's funny because, I've worked on boats before too that have that slide, because it was a sliding door. And just, you can imagine, it's not a hinge door you can open, even that can change. But we hear about cars all the time, right? They get in a wreck, and the person's trapped in there, so they got to get the jaws of life. Well, the boat was a wreck, and those doors were wedged closed, so that's the reason he couldn't get them open. And just that is like, so all right, this isn't working for me on the bridge, so in the water directly around to see if to assist him any way I could. And then that's when I was treading water right there on the side. That's when that the halyard from the outrigger caught my shoulder.
That had to have been terrifying.
And so it was like, whoa, like caught my attention, and looked up, and then it was like, but you see outriggers with it's got the the spreaders on there,
Yeah.
then it's got all the cables, and then all the X bracing, and
There's a lot going on.
Yeah, so there's a lot of trap points basically, and then that's when it was like, Cap, we got to get away from this thing.
Yeah.
And plus, so here's kind of a funny part too, is so just before we had left, I had gone to see the movie Titanic, and Eric had just read The Perfect Storm. So that's where some of those thoughts were coming from. But the whole time we were in the water, I wasn't dare going to ask him about the book, and he didn't dare ask me about anything in the movie.
That's funny.
Yeah,
That's a great movie.
Yeah.
That funny story about that movie. A good friend of mine that owns a scallop fleet up in Jersey.
Okay.
They used their boat to film it.
Oh, did they?
Yeah.
That's cool stuff.
Yeah. So we're actually gonna do a podcast with him too. He's got
That'll
a
be awesome.
full history in that industry. That's a whole other ball game.
Yeah, that'll be interesting to hear, like just some of the different things that that went on when they did. So when they filmed Captain Phillips, well, obviously with some of the stuff, they filmed that out of here. So that was,
I didn't know that.
yeah. So that was neat watching that happen. And like one of my buddies, it was the I don't know what you call it, but the cat, like the boat that Tom Hanks was on. So when every evening when Tom Hanks would come in, he'd be sitting back there on the back and drinking a cold beer. It was so cool that they had a day they didn't film, so he had his son flown in, and they went out and they went offshore fishing on Greg's boat.
That's awesome.
Yeah, so that was pretty awesome.
Did not know that.
Yep. But like even with like when you see the series, so and it's crazy how they film that stuff. So the rescue boat, the dinghy, like they'd already had the whole, so they filmed, I guess, the shot scene before they filmed the other part of it, which is most of the scene with that orange rescue boat in the water. So I guess I don't know why they do it.
That's another crazy
they have a whole methodology behind it. So.
Yeah. As the film industry is wild.
Yeah, it's pretty interesting.
So back to what I thought was nuts, and this is like I feel it would be my worst nightmare is you don't have any life jackets. That to me is like, oh shit. I mean, this is not good right now. What happened, man? I mean, like everything in this story is so incredible too, because eventually it all fell together. Like it just tell me after, like, when you didn't have a life jacket on, that what was going on?
I was prepared for it. So the week prior, we were in the Bahamas, and it was just put on my heart to do a lot of swimming. And I know you like to do some free diving. And,
oh yeah.
And I don't know if you surf or not, but I like to surf as well. And we don't typically just go swimming to go swimming, right?
Yeah.
We go in the water. But it was put on my heart to do a lot of swimming that week. So it was like, blessed be the Lord, my rock.
Yeah.
He was preparing me for the battle. And I think the other thing too is where we were. So being in the Gulf Stream, the salinity, and gave us, helped us out with our buoyancy.
Mm-hmm.
But there was a whole other side of it that I didn't realize till one of the team guys, when I was speaking to a group of kids, just informed me about what that salinity was doing, where it was basically pulling the water out of my body to come to equilibrium.
Yeah.
And so that was that didn't. I mean, plus we had the surfboard.
Yeah. Well, the surfboard, everything. This is what blew my mind. The cooler popped up, right? Mm-hmm. The surfboard. That changed everything, right?
Mm-hmm. So with the cooler, that I want to say the craziest thing about the coolers and the fenders and stuff we had on deck. So we think about our abilities in the water, and we think, yeah, I'm a pretty good swimmer. 10, 12 knots. We ain't swimming that fast.
No.
And that's one of the things that blew my mind when, once Eric and I cleared and she rolled over and went down, just all that high stuff that was floating, and it was just gone like so quick. So I mean, like our life rafts and things like that. And of course they have ballast bags and other things on there. We need to get to that stuff quick.
Yeah.
Because if it's a strong wind, it's gonna take it away faster than you think. But that one bait cooler, we were able to get hold of that, and that whole scenario there, I think that's really defines that we knew that without the EPIRB, without the life raft, without the distress call, there's only one way. There's only one way we can go with this for salvation, and that was up.
Yeah,
and that's why. And we never talked about our faith prior to that. And it just amazed me how in perfect unison we went into that. Our Father which art in heaven, hallowed be thy name. And we just kept repeating the Lord's Prayer. And then after that, that's when she had popped back up, capsized with just her wheels and a rudder and a little bit of her bottom. And survival C-101 is you got to be out of the water.
Yeah.
So that was the thing is like, Eric went to that. So let go of the cooler to get to the and it was just an itty bitty small bait cooler to get to the boat. Yet, that's when I saw the surfboard floating. So that was one of the things that I've talked to people about that have been in situations like I know it was somebody else that was lost in the Gulf, and I asked them about the hypothermia, and they really didn't experience it so much. And but they were holding on to a cooler that was filled with water and Gatorade, and they were able to keep hydrated, which that Team 6 medic guy, he's like, yeah. I mean, they were keeping that balance, so the water wasn't
No, it's
sucking the
real
heat up.
though. I
Yeah.
mean, I've talked to, I told you Chris Williamson that I've talked to. He said it was brutal at night. You know, getting, I mean, yeah, the water's warm, but remember how warm is your body temperature? And then once you sit in that, let's say 75-degree, that's cold still.
So that was one of the things with writing the book. Like, how was I going to explain to people that, water in like 79 degrees, you can get hypothermic in it? And so I had written the story, and then it kind of gets into the kind of like the science. And it was literally like one of these deals where, my wife and I, we had bought a camper, and that's where the writing was done. And I remember sitting out there in my camper, and I just like put my head down. I'm like, God, how am I going to make these people understand that you can become hypothermic in those water
You
temperatures?
explained it very well.
Yeah, but the cool thing is like literally I finished those words, and so our kids are in the 4-H livestock club, and there's a guy that had just moved out that's a neighbor that his kids had just gotten into it. And he's actually a Navy diver, and so he calls me. He's like, "Man, can you go to the Tractor Supply with me and help me build this goat pen?" I'm like, "Get me away from writing. I'll be there in 10 minutes, bro." And that was probably one of the best conversations related to the effects of the water on the body was with him on that way to and from Tractor Supply. But it was in the end, like when you look at the references, he's like, I'll tell you what, man, I'm going to send you a copy of the Navy Dive Manual. And going through that, I don't know if you've ever read it before.
I should. I need to.
I mean, but I mean, that has to be the world's foremost, probably most scientific, most real document on the effects of the water on the body, and it's pretty detailed. And yeah, it's got formulas in there, and it really goes into the whole water temperature.
Well, and that's why you guys were smart. I mean, your main mission, like you had to stay out of the water. You had to, like, that's where a life raft is so important. You know, just get out of the water. You know, it can kill you fast.
Even if you're in a life raft and you're getting splashed on, that's going to take some of the heat out of your body. But still, I mean, you got to be out of the water. You know
what gave me chills, and it's something that I never thought about, but you said it so good, and I couldn't imagine, but the diesel fuel.
Oh, man.
Tell us about that, because when you wrote about it, I had this image in my head. I'm like, that's gotta suck.
So that's one of the things that I was amazed by is like it wasn't like a whole bunch of diesel, but it doesn't take a whole lot to make a slick. And yeah, it was like one of those things that kind of hit me by surprise. Like I think maybe I was so focused on getting to that surfboard in the bag that when I hit it, it was just like the burn, just in my eyes, and it was like, how filmy it is. And so it just like covered my whole body, and like just the little cuts. Like we don't like pay. Like look at your arm. You got some little cuts on your arm right there. Yeah, those things that was like felt like fire. But just in my ears and especially in my nostrils and like in my, just getting into my lungs and my mouth, just the fumes, and that was so cool. And this is where I like to, because people like to ask about the survival mindset.
I want to know
and that's where it really kind of the way the body works is amazing, because as soon as that happened, my first thought was, please Lord, don't let me throw up. I can't afford to lose this breakfast that I had this morning.
It was a good breakfast too.
Yeah, it was good. Yeah, Eric was his bagel supreme.
I heard the lox too, right? Yeah.
So that's the thing. So when you're in those survival type situations, if you're so focused on panicking, you aren't going to be able to think, and you got to be able to think to get yourself out of it. I mean, these dudes you were around today. I mean, you heard some stories about living through some pretty crazy stuff.
Absolutely, yeah.
And it's about keeping that mind focused. And when we focus on our fear during that, we're not helping our odds of making it.
So what was your main focus?
My main focus was like, I don't want to really say my main focus was the end of the day. My main focus was now. Like what can be done now to keep me alive, and or to kind of extend it, for that opportunity for a rescue. And that was the mindset, and just keep on working. When
you're saying working, like what were the steps? What was next? I remember reading, like, what I thought was really impressive. You took really good care of your captain, Like you always prioritized him first before you, which is badass. I mean, that's how it's supposed to be done, and I admired that a lot. And he took care of you too. I mean, he trusted you a lot.
And just being younger and you know, again, that training or that workup or whatever you call that happened that week before with just swimming, being prepared for it. You know, we're surrounded by stuff with high performance teams, and you know, trust is a huge part of that. And there was never a time when we questioned each other out there. It was like, all right, this is what's important. Let's do it. You think I'm not going to go do it. You know, of course, you know, he was the captain, and I just always wanted to make sure that, you know, his orders stick. You know how it is on a boat. But, you know,
what was he telling you to do? Were you guys
really? Then that was the thing. There wasn't a whole lot. I mean, it was because, you know, we were just analyzing everything. You know, and I think the hardest part was that last time when he sent me out to look for the EPIRB. Initially, of course, the order, you know, was get the life jackets because, you know, that's what he had. That's the scenario. I mean, captain's got to be on the radio, and that's something. Let me bring this up real quick too, to think about. We had another situation where it was in December out of Rudy Inlet. We're going to run down to the point and struck a sub.
Damn.
And
yeah.
And that was the thing that I'll never forget. Jimmy, my captain, then he was doing the Mayday. Well, the water was flowing in the boat. Of course, that was a Paul Man with a collision bulkhead, so, you know, she never sunk. Paul did a great job with that rig, but our high water alarms. I keep a pair of dikes on the bridge with me now because Jimmy couldn't communicate with the Coast Guard because the high water alarm was going off. So it got to the point where he just got underneath there and just ripped the wires out so that so the message could go. So that's something for people to think about.
Yeah. Well, this is also interesting too because your accident happened in, what was it, 98? Things were much different then.
Oh yeah, way different, especially weather.
Do you remember what EPIRB you had? Because it would, now I don't know too much about this, but I could be totally wrong. But did those EPIRBs go off automatically when the boat goes down? And because then, you know, the EPIRBs today, if the boat goes down and it goes afloat and pops off the boat, it automatically goes off.
So this one actually, this EPIRB was in like a duffel bag with our safety gear, so it wasn't mounted like you would have like if we were an inspected vessel, it would have been required to float off, you know, automatically deploy. So that EPIRB was based on a radio frequency, which now they're, of course, you know, satellite. So that was one of the unique things too, because I remember back then we always had confidence in them. And so when I was writing, I called my electronics guy with Marlin Marine. I'm like, dude, tell me more about these EPIRBs back then. He goes, it's like, bro, the only way they'd have known you were down is if the plane flying over, considering where you were,
picked it up from there,
picked up the signal, was listening for the signal.
Damn.
I'm like, really? He's like, yeah. I'm like, holy smokes. But you have so much confidence in them today.
Yeah. They save lives.
Yeah. I mean, one of my old captains, like, you know, he's an inspected vessel, and the thing accidentally went off. Actually, when the Coast Guard was coming down to do his topside inspection, and it's pinpoint. So yeah, it's what a change.
Yeah, and that's what when I was reading, I thought the same thing. But I mean, and then do you regret leaving Eric at any point? Because I know you guys were sticking together. This was really cool, and I wanted to ask you about this because I didn't hear you really talk about it today. But you guys were smart. Was it you looking at the sky, and you had Eric looking at the horizon? I remember, or was it vice versa? Well, regardless.
Yeah. So when we went down, like I had my slickers on and my shorts and t-shirt. And Eric, he had his shorts and t-shirt, but he also had his cap on and his sunglasses. And so I kicked the slickers. It was funny, like I kicked that stuff off, my chute comes floating to the top, and watch that go away. And Eric, he gave me his glasses so we could to be a force multiplier basically, so I could watch the sky and look, because without glasses I wasn't going to see so much because it was really sunny then. And then like he kept his cap on where his eyes were shaded, and he would just kind of like scan and watch the horizon. And then, so the flares floated to us fairly quickly.
Yeah, you had nothing.
Yeah,
it just popped up.
Yeah.
What are the odds of that?
That whole thing is just
this. Tell everybody this, because this to me, really shows that there was somebody honestly looking down at you guys and there for you, and you talk about that a lot, and I the more I hear these stories, I become, like, definitely way more of a believer, and I mean, it's real.
It is real. Very, it's
And
so real.
tell everybody about that, like, your
So,
experience there.
so that means there's so many different there's so many different like little mini miracles we were given throughout the day. But and one of the miracles I'm going to say was related to that, to the life jackets. Of course, it was a wrong type of life. It was like our cruising and
Yeah.
intercoastal life jackets that we end up finding. But so I was going out looking for stuff on the surfboard. Eric was stationary and the things would come up to him. So as I was out looking the debris field, because it formed a line, one line down sea, then off of that, there was another line that kind of went diagonal. And as I was searching for things, for what was useful, I kind of noticed that things of similar buoyancy that were in similar locations in the boat. And that was a core to it. Like, okay, if I can find something that was from inside, like a cushion off of the couch or something like that, well, maybe the EPIRB or life raft will be somewhere around that.
Yeah.
So things of similar buoyancy, of similar location were next to each other. How in the world is it that the life jackets popped up near Eric? The flare kits popped up to where Eric was. Eventually, my backpack would come up to where Eric was.
And meanwhile, you're over here looking.
Yeah, looking. And it made no sense because there was no other debris from those areas that popped up. And of course, the life jackets were on the bridge, and some of this other stuff was, obviously my backpack, that was up in the forward stateroom, which is pretty far from the bridge. And I mean, it just, there's no way to describe it other than the good Lord, he just like, here you go. Let me give you this little gift to get you a little bit further. And when we look at that in our lives, there's so often that he does give us those little things, to just help us get along. And that's one of my biggest prayers sometimes when I'm having a hard time. I'm like, Lord, I just need to know you're with me.
All right, guys, this week's episode is brought to you by Turtlebox. Turtlebox is becoming the best waterproof and Bluetooth speaker in the industry. They are basically indestructible. You can throw them in the water. You can run them over with your car. I bring it everywhere. Besides just the boat, I have it on the beach. I have it working out at the house. They freaking crank. I'm telling you guys, the best speaker in the industry. So check them out.
What scared me when I was reading that, I was worried that when you were searching for everything, that you were going to lose Eric.
Me too.
Yeah. I mean, do you regret searching? Or, I mean, because what they tell a lot of people today is just, stick together. But at the same time, though, I mean, you're thinking, oh, I got to get to work.
Yeah. So I think one of the big reasons they tell you to stick together too is to increase that. You got these bright orange life jackets on, and so to make that image bigger in the water. And plus, there's some other things too there, that some team guys explained to me related to warmth and the reason they stay in the huddle sometimes when they're in the water. But and I think in our case, it's like nobody knows we're out here, so we're going to have to. I gotta go look. There wasn't. I want to say not really. I mean, it was part of the job. It had to be done. But that second time I went out, for was the last ditch effort, and knowing that that this was there was a lot of regret as I left, and I told Eric that if I find the EPIRB, we aren't going to stop looking until we find you. And I just that thought that of I could imagine what that was like for him. And I think for him was because that was much later in the day, and it was getting bad out there then, with the sea conditions. And I just think that was his. I'm gonna do what I can do to save you, buddy.
Did you end up ever finding anything?
Mm-hmm. And I think if I would have found the life raft because I was going down sea, I don't think I ever would have deployed it.
No,
because I would have never been able to get it back to Eric.
What did you end up, like, to try to go? Could you see Eric?
No. Oh, no. I was, on a surfboard, you can paddle, think about how far you can paddle. 45
Also,
minutes.
it could be pulling you with the surfboard sometimes, pulling you faster than you realize.
Mm-hmm. And then but I had the debris line for the most part to use as my path. But then, when that started to break apart on that last time out, that's when I allowed the thoughts to really get heavy.
You spoke so well today about it, and I mean, if you feel comfortable telling everybody
Yeah.
about your experience, but man, I gave me chills when I read it, and then hearing you say it again today. But yeah, that was the turning point. It's I think, yeah, be honest with you, it's probably the reason you're still here.
Yeah, so that was, we got to be careful about our self-talk.
Yes,
And Jimmy talked about that earlier today, and there's a lot of truth to it, and that's where I didn't have my guard up with my self-talk. I considered myself to be a failure because everything that I'd done hadn't been working out to save us, and just that spiral of you're worthless, you're worthless, you're going to die, you're going to die, you're going to die. I mean, it got to the point where I just couldn't get it out of my mind that your options of death. You're going to drown or you're going to get eaten by a shark. There's nothing else. Those two things are going to happen. Look, your life jacket's already starting to tear. The surfboard's losing its buoyancy.
you're drifting further away.
Yeah. You have no clue where Eric is now. And, the seas were building. I mean, it was pretty, so here's what, as somebody that surfs, you get it. I mean, most people, when they see like a 6-foot wave, they're thinking, for us, it's an overhead wave. But for most people, we're in the water, they think that thing's like 12 foot because they're looking at the face, not the height. Well, when you stand up, you're not standing up on the face of it, you're standing up on the height of it. That was a mental challenge as well, just knowing the conditions. Like, it got bad, man. And I think too, because of those conditions, what that did for the fight.
I was gonna say, how the heck did you get
Just even trying to control the surfboard was so hard. And just like as that wind was blowing and just with the spray, and that was the thing too. So I remember after a while, you kind of end up getting some congestion, and that was one of my. I don't think I ever wrote this, but one of my fears was related to that congestion that I was starting to get, and that knowing that I'm breathing in and out of my mouth.
Yeah.
So that's drying my throat out more. And knowing that as that's drying it out, that's kind of also sucking the moisture out of my body. And then and having my mouth open when drops of when spray would go into my mouth or whatever, I'd go under and maybe water would get my mouth, just trying to, just trying to
Prevent
get that
all
out. Knowing what that would eventually lead to, with more dehydration.
And after all this, I mean, what how'd you get? What happened, man? What'd you get?
So that's when it got to the point where all hope was lost, and I just made a decision. I was gonna end my life. I knew I would never find Eric again. I'd failed. I couldn't find the Apirl life raft. Sun's getting a lot lower, and I knew we weren't going to make it.
Jeez, I can't imagine watching that sun go down and just thinking to yourself.
And so with this part, it's so when I get upset about this, it's not.
You're doing.
It's great. It's grateful tears.
Yeah.
That's where it comes from. That's like the part of it's a good pain, if that makes sense.
Yeah, absolutely.
And writing about it, like my wife, I woke her up, I think she said 6 times that night screaming, but I knew it had to be written. And yeah, so it was the planning of my death. It was very detailed and deliberate, the thought pattern. If you're free diving, you've got to know your limits.
Absolutely.
And we didn't have all that fancy stuff like the big fins back then, people have now.
Yeah, no. Watches, all that stuff.
Yeah. Yeah, it was like, old citizen, regular old dive watches. And so I was surgical about the way that was going to be. And I knew how far down I could go. I knew the limit. And I knew that at that limit, if, would make sure I had a good full exhale to get any air, make sure any of that air was out of my lungs, to help that drive to get down further, to reduce buoyancy. And planning that out, knowing that I wouldn't make it to the top. The only other thought was maybe it's a trough, but I knew that I would, I thought, and I thought about what it was going to feel like, when my body couldn't either I blacked out or I tried to take that gulp in.
Yeah.
And I thought about maybe there'll be some convulsions but it won't hurt that long, but it's nothing like
I can't.
getting ripped apart by a shark.
Yeah.
Um,
That gives me such goosebumps, man. But I mean, the whole story though is so incredible because it's just where did that explain to me how you describe that? Just that, like the Incredible Hulk just came out of nowhere. Like it's cool, man.
the closest way I can describe it is, so there's scripture that talks about Satan as a roaring lion. It's in Job, and it talks about Satan being a roaring lion, just going across this earth looking for someone to devour, to destroy their life. And that's the closest way I can describe that wave. I mean, it was just out there and looking for a boat to devour, and we just happened to be.
But after you, like, I mean, you survived. So where after that, where you were basically thinking you were going to end your life. I mean, what? That's
where it was. That's where So I had made the plan. I know I hit this too. So also with that mindset of going there, it was, lots of thoughts of who I would want to have what, like, who I would want to have this shotgun, like my roommate, Mike, at the time, my first shotgun was a 20 gauge Remington 1100. I wanted him to have that because it was in my bedroom in our apartment. Thought about I had this really cool 1994 blue and white Bronco. I wanted my nephew to have that.
Yeah.
And, the point of me saying this is that if you come across anybody that's talking like that and thinking like that, that's not and they aren't right in their will.
Mm-hmm.
That's alarms need to be going off. That's a mayday.
Yeah.
Because they might be thinking about ending their life. That's we had a bunch of psychologists here today,
mm-hmm.
and when we talked about that, they were like, yeah, that's a red flag.
Mm-hmm.
So anyway, so that part of it was. Then it went into the whole thing where I was like, man, I really wasn't sure, because, I grew up going to church, but, I kind of, was more worried about partying than anything else at this point in time in my life. And I'm like, where's God stand on this, me into my life? And so I kind of prayed about it. I mean, I hadn't prayed in a long time, but literally when I was in the water, like I was out there floating, like I was like singing hymns from being a kid, and just because I knew that he was the only one that was going to save us. And that prayer, like, Lord, please don't, I don't want to die, but I'm going to die, and I'm not going to get eaten by a shark. I mean, so when I went to end it, took off that life jacket that was tearing, and kind of went to roll under, and at that moment of rolling under, my body it's crazy. My body just filled with warmth and strength that was beyond my ability. So let me address something else there too.
Yeah.
So, physiologically, our bodies, like, duck hunting, whatever it is, your fingers and your toes get cold first. Well, there's a very simple reason for that. Your body's cold.
Mm-hmm.
Your body says, all right, these little blood vessels that are going to your fingers and toes, we don't need those as much as we need this. So we're going to start to close up. So they start to, constrict to get the heat at the core.
Mm-hmm.
And then your body will get to a point where it's like, you're done.
Yeah.
And then that you'll have a dilation, and that there's a rushing of blood that goes out, and creates that warm sensation. Man, I had the dexterity to do things that I wasn't to that point yet. And because I was just shivering a little bit, it wasn't like I was like super, super, super cold at this point. So I know that rush of warmth wasn't something that was, related to that process. I knew it was like, though, this is like supernatural because of the strength that came with it too.
Yeah.
And then that's when it's just like, so it scared me. And so I grabbed my life jacket, but I knew it was special, and grabbed the surfboard. And then as I got everything together, then over that shoulder, I heard a voice, and it was, John, you spent a lot of time out here. Pick your line and paddle it. And it wasn't an Australian accent, so I know it wasn't Eric. And so he was obviously.
What was your reaction? Like,
it kind of freaked me out.
I would freak me out.
I don't know how to freak me out, but yet there was so much comfort in it because it was calm and it penetrated everything. Now years later, dealing with the fact that that happened, yeah, that was way worse than the water. Just like why?
Yeah, why?
And like to get a phone call out of the blue, like, God's got a plan for your life. I'm like, yeah, right. He's got it for everybody. And actually, it led me to quit going to church totally for the most part. And led to a lot of anger. So I got figured out.
The more I hear these stories, it's, I mentioned this to you earlier, it's like, I really do believe there's somebody looking down and everything happens for a reason. And your story, Chris's story, I get Jack Dottie's story. I've got a bunch of them, and it's all the same. Carter Viss, you got to listen to that one. That's incredible. All the same response. And I want to introduce all you guys.
Oh, that'd be great.
Yeah, because it all resembles. And then I mean, after that, things started to fall back together, right? I mean,
It's then. So again, as a young mate working on head boats and like autopilots were nothing like they are today. And I never forget like my old captain, like he was like, because it looked like a snake behind the boat when is a 16-year-old getting on that wheel up there on that thing for these long trips home from wreck fishing. And he's like, look at the compass, get your heading, look at the waves, watch the pattern of the waves and look back at the compass and check it. So mainly focus on the wave pattern so you're on course, and then double check yourself every now and then and turn the wheel slow when you turn it. Don't be cranking it over because you're just going to go worse. And so that's, and it stuck. That's what whenever I had to hold the wheel, even when I got started sport fishing, that was one of the things that
Stuff you don't
I
forget.
did to help give me all right, maybe our autopilot just kicked off for whatever reasons, because the wave pattern is different. And to this day, I still use it. And so that was the crazy thing, is because the Mike Merritt, Catman Oregon Inlet, I remember the bragging wind is no man's friend. So the current and the wind were going across each other. Mm-hmm. So that just makes the ocean. And of course, you got an underlying groundswell, so that just makes it kind of nuts.
Mm-hmm.
And I couldn't find a pattern. And I know my capabilities at that time, especially. And there was like a pattern was shown to me, and I just paddled back up sea to Eric.
And you found Eric.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Within a few degrees. I was off a little bit, but that was because I noticed.
And how was Eric doing?
He was happy to see me.
Yeah.
And I was definitely happy to see him. But that's when the crazy thing was. That's when it was so like that's when my backpack had floated up to Eric. So, like Mexico, the Yucatan can actually have some decent surf sometimes.
Oh yeah.
But the problem is staghorn coral, which is not. That stuff sucks.
Yeah.
And so I would wear like either like a shorty or something to kind of protect myself a little bit in case I ended up on the reef. And that's what was in the backpack. And he's like, I'm sorry, I bailed, didn't find it. That's all right, buddy. Look what I got. I got your backpack. I'm like, did you look at the backpack?
Is that how he reacted?
Yeah. And I'm like, did you look at the backpack? He's like, no. Like it was a lady's purse or something. You didn't want to go. I'm like, oh, there's wetsuits in the backpack. And so there was a P2 top, which buddy of mine, Wes Lane. He was a professional surfer for a while.
Yeah.
I had quit surfing at one point in time, and we traded a pair of pliers for a surfboard. Pretty good deal at my end. And but he had given me this top, and that's what Eric put on because that kept the core warm. And then I put on that because the shorty was like 2 mil, and it was all open on the side, so you get that flush and you lose all that warm water inside of it. But that was kind of crazy too. I remember putting that thing on out there in the water. That was
so you got a little positive vibe going now.
Oh yeah. But there was something too that I knew that based on what had happened. And there's stories like all throughout the Bible where there's confidence that's gained from knowing that God is true to who He is, and He showed up. So He showed up, so I knew we were going to make it. I didn't know how. It didn't make sense because everything by my eyes said, "You're dead. You're going to die." But by faith, I knew we were going to somehow get through this thing, and we're just sitting here now.
So yeah, let's tell everybody like what actually happened, and because to me, I mentioned it earlier, everything just started kind of falling together slowly. But I mean, you guys were still weren't, I mean, 100% there, but it was things kept on happening.
Yeah. So, and there was a lot of things that happened throughout the day with those, um, like the details of the cruise ship, and they can read about that. I mean, that was
Yeah, I'll let them read about that. But
that was a hard crush. But then now after this has happened, where I tried to end it, and now there's like, the conditions now, sea conditions are constantly getting worse. But still just knowing that, and then like that little speck of light was so much brighter now each time you would find it.
the speck of light on the horizon.
So, so a speck of light chases. Think about a dark room.
Yeah.
All it takes is a little speck
Yep.
of light, and it like that. Your eyes that just seems so much bigger than that speck because it chases away darkness.
Mhm.
And it was so much easier to see those little specks of light that were out there, that were the good things that were happening. But still, I mean, it was. Yeah, I mean, you had to keep it. I'm not going to say that there weren't down times even after that whole experience with when I went to end it. But it was so much easier to get back on track, and that's just a metaphor for life. What we need to do is just get back on
Don't
track.
give up and
Keep on fighting, never give up. And that's kind of like ever since this whole thing started, like even your book, whenever I sign a book, the last few years, it's like never give up, because don't ever get up, because we don't know what the plan is going to be. Shoot, when this happened, I never thought we'd be sitting at a table, right? I never thought I'd be involved with this place. And
this is a whole other story we'll mention at the very end, but I just want to finish and talk about, I mean, how it really ended there with you and Eric, because it's an amazing ending, but it's not really the ending. I mean, look what you're doing now. But when you guys get on the boat with the captain, so obviously when we got back, it's like with the surfboard bag, and there was leashes in the bag, and now we had something to put stuff. So I remember one time I found a bag of like filet mignon that were like Palm Beach, like butcher shop. So I don't know how much they were worth, but they were probably a lot of money. Did you guys take a bite?
Heck no, man. I looked at it and I was like, but there was talk about there was nothing those steaks were going to do for me, but that half-a-cent bag could save our life, because we needed something to put stuff in.
Yeah.
But then plus the steaks, I mean, I saw that blood in the package. I'm like, ooh, that ain't good.
No.
But yeah, so the backpack was a sustainable type of device that we could put stuff in if we found it. Like I remember one time finding peanut butter, and that's what we needed. Again, more light, but we get that together. But the surfboard leashes, because I'm planning on breaking a few leashes, so I had extras. We use those to tether each other together. It's like, all right, no more. I mean, we're staying connected. No more going out looking. Plus, the conditions were so bad, it was just a matter of just focus on staying alive where we were.
Mm-hmm.
And because like when the waves would hit us, especially later in the day as they were capping more. I mean, when they would send us tumbling, or let's say it sent Eric tumbling, it was like. With a stretch of the other, with
your full survival mode. Let's hold on, right?
Yeah, let's hold on. But yeah, there's just those, with the last 6 feet of the cord. When somebody was getting, think about your surfboard, like if a wave hits and it pulls on you.
Oh yeah.
Well, imagine that's a person it's not a surfboard that's quite so
much
light.
more force.
Yeah. So and then like we needed to stay close, because we were watching for the Portuguese man of war, and be like, all right, let's dodge left or let's dodge right, so that thing can get past us without wrapping us up. And as we were doing that, just kind of, but we're still like looking for salvation, and our rescue, and just I saw a flare floating, and you'd see it, and because of the sea conditions, it'd be a while before I'd see it again.
Yeah, because it's big. It's like what, 6 to 8 foot?
No, solid, yeah.
And I know just from running boats with divers in the water. Even being on the boat, I still can't see those divers' heads. Like I'm always just looking, we're free diving, we're not scuba diving. So I'm like, okay, there he is, the wave comes. Okay, I can't see him. So I can't imagine how hard it was to keep an eye on that flare.
Yeah. So yeah, that was, head level.
It's hard enough to see him on a, yeah, exactly. That's what I'm saying.
And not knowing whether is it worth the risk to go get it.
That's true. I didn't think about that.
Because, we're down to that one bullet popped off going into the surfboard bag. Yeah. So we had one for the gun. And there was something just like inside of me is like, because obviously, we use the flares and throw them and they leave them in the water around us. But I just felt like I need to go get that one and get into that flare and it being good. And just like, it's good. There was like
So you
so
got
much joy and hope in that good flare. And then, but then to look and then to see Eric, of course, he was down sea from me, and to see his just whole facial expression change and just hear him screaming something, but not being able to tell what he was screaming, was like,
what was he saying?
I couldn't tell.
Oh,
And that's why, I thought I thought that maybe, like sharks were getting them. And, so that's when I took off towards him. And then as I got closer, he was screaming, "It's a fish boat! It's a fish boat! It's a fish boat!" And it was like, so yeah, and that was so cool too. So lighting flares in the water.
this is a big. Well, I was gonna say. I mean, so you got the flare, and were you ever worried that shit? It's gonna get wet. It's not gonna go up fire, or
I don't think about that because I knew that they were made for environments in the water. But how many people have actually like practiced striking a flare?
I've never have. Honestly, I probably should, but I
Oh,
you
yeah,
have to be. I don't know.
It's not as easy as you think sometimes. So we had gotten a lot better at it throughout the day. And but yeah, so yeah, it was like perfect unison where we didn't even it wasn't like even a thing where we had to say do this. So I like struck that flare that I had in my hand. He rolled because he was hanging with the surfboard. He rolled off the surfboard in perfect unison. Like I let go of it, he grabbed it, and then that's when I went to the back of the surfboard, and that's when I pulled the pistol out with the one round we had left and loaded it.
One round,
Yeah, one round.
last shot.
And that's why it was so important that, what I mentioned earlier about watching that boat. I mean, they're going slow, but still with that kind of wind, the spray was coming up. I mean, I remember watching the spray on that 50-foot Bertram coming up and just like covering the curtains. And I'm like, I got to get this right. And because he was off to the side of us, and like this timing has to be perfect. So that, as that flare is launching, he's going to see it on a rise.
How far away was he?
I don't know. I mean, maybe half mile, maybe.
Okay, so that's, I mean,
Pretty
yeah.
close.
Yeah.
Or maybe 3/4 mile, but it's pretty close.
Yeah.
A lot closer than the cruise ship was. And I remember timing that, and then just hearing those motors like idle down that little bit, and turn around looking and just seeing that bow, that 72-foot Viking in the ditch digger. It was that is that was kind of funny. It was like seeing that, like, whoa, we're rescuing. Like, then it was like, oh no, I hope he sees us and doesn't chop us up, because we were like dead in his like if zero degrees being bow, that's where we were.
Jeez.
That's what.
It's an incredible story.
So then that's where we're like with like I know I heard that. I know what I heard. There's no doubt about it. But with the fact that we drifted across the Gulf Stream, and we weren't, I mean, like Eric didn't swim anywhere.
Yeah.
Drifted across the Gulf Stream into that kind of a gale to be placed in the path of the only other boats making the crossing that day. Yet they changed course because they saw that the conditions were getting bad. Man.
It's the only two boats that were out, right?
Mm-hmm. And they got out just before the call came from Cancun to Key West that said, don't send any boats, it's getting bad. Because back then, like Eric had got a weather routers report, and that was like the best thing we had going for high seas forecast.
Yeah.
And so based on that, it looked good. And just like the night before, it was beautiful. But just that storm
you guys
popped
were
up.
planning on getting there in a day.
Yeah. And yeah, so God is good, brother. That's all I can say.
Yeah. I'm really looking forward for people. I really hope younger kids read this book and listen to this story, because you really get into such good detail in that book, and your goals moving forward, man, are incredible. Like what you got me involved. I honestly had no idea when you called me. I had no idea what I was going to see today. I mean, I kind of did, but nothing like. I mean, you weren't kidding. Like this is the real deal. This is where champions are.
We're saving lives here.
Yeah. So tell everybody a little bit about what you're doing and your goals moving forward after you wrote this book, because you were relatively quiet for a while, right? You didn't.
So, yeah, I did that. I would share the story every now and then because, I mean, the big thing was is I wanted to be known for my fishing abilities, not because I went swimming one day. I mean, all my buddies, they knew what happened. there was no point in glorifying myself out of this at all. I mean, I still don't want anything out of this. I want people to know that God is real.
Mhm.
And he showed up out there just like, everybody said back then across pretty much the industry. Um,
Yeah. You I don't think you understand though, like, well, I mean, maybe you do, but you're doing a lot by just showing up here and like, everybody that their faces today when you told that story, it was pretty damn cool to see.
I'll tell you something else that was cool too. So, I hadn't been back to Oceanside Marina since it had happened until a couple of years ago. And really, Eric, you would think that Eric and I talked all the time. I mean, he is so close and tight. I mean, we were so connected, but I think it was just maybe the pain associated with going back there if we talked
I can see that.
was what delayed it. But so that's one of the things that were set on. Is like we neither want so we don't want any glory out of this. So that's one of the reasons why we didn't talk about it. So then when I failed at being a husband and father, ended up divorced, and that's when I was like, God, I'm like, God, what do you want from me? He's like, time to tell my story. I'm like, I'm not into glorifying myself, and that's when it came like, you aren't glorifying you, you're glorifying me, and that's when doors started open, to come to share the story here, share the story there, and then as that progressed, it was a situation where it was like, hey, you need to write a book. You need to write a book. I'm like, yeah, no, I'm not gonna. I can't write a book. And then my wife was able to link up with somebody that had written a book, and through this program that was a hybrid publish. So my fear is being this story was so well known about the industry. So that was the thing when I started looking into this, I'm like, are people still talking about it? I mean, this happened in 1998, and they were, and but there a lot of it was about the surfboard and the other things. So I was like. There's no mention about God in any of this recent stuff that I'm seeing on blogs or whatever.
Mhm, mhm.
So the story needs to go out, and in the writing process, and we go on a vacation to down to the Keys, and it was my first time back to Oceanside Marina, and I just want to let them know, hey, look, because that was like they had like a awesome bait and tackle store there, and that's where we staged to go to Mexico,
Mhm.
and I mean, full charter fleets out of there. There was like a botel there too back then, and so we get there, and I'm like, it's all condos now, and I'm like, what in the world? So I'm like, well, let's go. Let me show you where our slip was that we left from. So we go over there. She has supported me so much and been through so much with this story, and she's been around, and we're like. I mean, it's kind of funny because I even tell my mates, like, look, if we're at a tournament, some dude comes up and hugs me, it's like, it's okay because it's
Yeah,
they know.
yeah.
And and she's seen that so much with my buddies coming up, especially the guys that you read about that were that were
Mhm.
on that dock when we hit there, that like JJ, there's other guys that came all the way up from almost from Belize almost to come up to be there
Mhm.
when we hit. To come up to this, so there's this guy, and I wish I could remember his name, but he was right there on the charter dock there at Oceanside, and it was like a 27 contender or whatever he had, and so I asked him, I'm like, is there like a ship store here anymore? And he's like, nah, man, the only thing they have now is fuel and ice. They haven't had a ship store in a long time, and then he was like, so what's up? And I was like, well, it's just like I wrote a book, and I would just like to connect with if there's a ship store to see if they'd probably be interested knowing that this marina is in the book.
Yeah.
And he's like, really? Like, what's it about? And I go,
It's awesome.
I left out of here in 98 and was lost at sea. And this is that gratitude part of it. And he looked at me, he's like, that was you? But I'm like, yeah. You're the one with the surfboard. I'm like, yeah. He goes like, you changed my life. But for her to be able to see that, to know that this thing that's been so difficult is making a difference in people, even before the book came out. with people just knew about it. It changed the industry in a way, and it changed it where people were they were different. Like Apirl's life rafts were out and they were ready to go. But to hear him say that and say like, I don't ever since then, like I don't travel the way I used to. Like everything is always ready because of what y'all went through.
Wow. It's an awesome community. It's a tight community. It's big but small, you know? I mean, at least from me going to all the boat shows and like Big Rock, the White Marlin Open, everybody, it's pretty tight community, and everybody kind of sticks together. And I think that's awesome that many people reach out to you. And
so that was, saying that. So that was one of my fears too, is like, was about related to haters.
It's great.
And so that was part of it too. So some of the stuff related to the SEAL stuff that's in the book, and like there was a number of those guys that that read it before anything came out, and I'm like, man, I don't want to. This is one area I don't want to get anything wrong with this because I don't want to step on anybody's toes. And one of those guys, the medic dude that explained everything to me, he was like, Johnny, I mean, you're going to have haters, but you're doing the right thing. And that's one thing I got to say about this is, and so I was nervous that, number one, that my brothers would think that I am trying to seek glory out of this or use it to make money.
No.
And man, I've got nothing but support from everybody. It's been so awesome. And it's funny because really one of my mates literally pulled me to the side one day and he's like, look, it's okay. Even if you make a little bit of money, it's okay. And it's like, then that hit me when he did that. And I really, Gary, if you listen to this, man, thanks, brother, for doing that day. But the other part of it is like, I'm alive. I got paid. So, like with book sales and all that, like you saw me giving books out today.
Oh yeah.
And so, like, for me, it's like giving back. Like I told God, I'm like, look.
You're doing it every day.
Yeah, I'm gonna, so we probably give away as many books as we sell, and but then like with these few builds that we've done last week, with these wives of the SEALs, like the mission force, they wanted to supply those books, so
that's
they
awesome,
covered that
man.
tab.
Yeah, from what I've been told is that I mean you've helped out a lot of people. You're probably helping out people right now you don't even know it that are reading this book. But and when I looked this book up, I didn't realize how much behind the scenes that you're doing. I always thought, this is just a story of guys lost at sea. But no, what you're doing with the community that's been through traumatic incidents, suicidal, all that stuff, man, it's really impressive. And I really, really, anybody that's listening to this needs to buy this book or to reach out to me or Johnny here. I'm sure you'd be more than happy to help or talk to anybody. Mm-hmm. It's an incredible story. It's very detailed. Yeah, man, I learned a lot. I learned a lot today. The stuff you're doing here with Jimmy and them, it's freaking awesome.
Yeah. So there's a story in there about, so the part that's in the book that's more or less about the SEALs and snipers.
Yeah.
Or it's SEALs. So one of the unique things about the book is, in most of the chapters, is the name of a boat that I either was made on or ran at one point in time. So they even entered like this SEAL sniper that so I was fished on a Paul Mann boat called the Sniper, and so that's how I kind of integrated that with that one. But even when I was writing, so I mean, so when I wrote this was during the middle of COVID.
Mm-hmm.
And a lot of stuff was going on then, obviously. And unfortunately, police took a whack.
Oh, yeah.
And the police departments did, just because people weren't respecting like how important what they do is. And so that part of it, like at one point in time, like one of the editors was like, I don't know if you want to put that. I'm like, oh no, it's going to be in there. I'm not taking it out.
No.
And as soon as I told her that, she's like, no problem. We're going to keep it in there.
Always stay true to like what you believe in. I mean, screw anybody else that hates it or maybe just stick to whatever you believe in. Yeah. When the gentlemen today, the police officers told that story today after you told yours, I was just,
wow.
Yeah, wow. But then they look back at you and are like, Man, Johnny, like I know, yeah. I mean, you're right on the money with how you felt, and that God is real, and
Yes.
then to me, I don't know. I've learned so much from these stories, and I hope everybody listening does too. So
He's good. And then, I mean, how in the world is it that a fisherman gets in a place like? How in the world is it a fisherman ends up speaking to the Naval Special Warfare Group at the U.S. Naval Academy?
it's badass.
That's like, how does that happen? Other than, I mean, it's
Yeah.
the people putting the right people in the right places, and so the story in that section that about the police, there's a reference to Scott, who you met today.
Yep.
And so Scott wanted to start something like a Wounded Warriors for police officers, and related to getting them hunting and fishing and just getting somewhere they can bond. And so he called me in tears, like, because he was involved with our the Building 2 shooting that we had at our municipal center.
Yeah.
And you met a guy today that was part of that, and actually he put some of that soul in his knife. And so those guys, they just.
Did he know you were writing about him, or did he?
Oh, yeah.
Okay.
So actually, he was one of the guys that read the book before anything.
Yeah.
Just to like give me his feedback, and so I was on the way home one day. He called me crying, like, man, and he started giving me the stats, like some of the stats you'll read there about how many police officers the city of Virginia Beach will lose, and the potential for suicide amongst those officers, because that was a different deal. I mean, that wasn't just like going into a mass shooters. That was going into a situation where these are people they work with.
Yeah.
I mean, city of Virginia Beach employees, and it was tough on them. And so he wanted to get that thing started, and so he told me that day on the phone. He's like, look, because we're fortunate, we have a farm in Goochland County outside of Richmond, and he's like, can we take guys up there hunting? I'm like, yeah, sure. And he goes, well, this is what I want to start. But if they want to be a part of the group, I want them to hear your story. And that's when I told him, like, look, if they're going to hear my story, they're going to hear about God, because that's the only reason I'm here. And he was like, I'm cool with that.
Yeah.
And it was neat to watch. And I told him, I was like, you put the God at the center, you better hang on. And it was crazy, because I call farmers that I'd never known them allow anybody to hunt. And they're like, oh, sure, John, yeah, that's for that. I got a pond. They can go fishing back there too, other than hunting. And a great place for them to camp. And that was just so cool. And then COVID hit, squashed it. He ended up coming here to pick up one of the Valhalla's Forge commission pieces for a police officer. And he saw what was going on and started getting involved with it. Then he called me. He's like, dude, you have got to come down here and check this out. So I did. And Samantha and I, we came to an event, and where it was kind of like there were some senators here and some other folks just kind of like putting stars in the flags for the fallen, and then like the next week there was a build with Slick Dudes,
Mhm.
and so I come to that, and then like, so I'm just kind of I'm just observing. I wasn't part of it, anything yet. So then it's like approaching lunchtime, and Jimmy looks at me and is like, all right, you ready? I'm like, what do you mean, are you ready? Like, yeah, you're telling your story at lunch. I'm like, I am. And
Is that how it all got started?
Yeah. So like, what are you going to tell a Tier 1 Navy SEAL Command Master Chief? No, I don't think so.
No.
So so that's how
He's
it
a great
started.
guy.
Oh yeah, he is. He's become a good friend, and I mean, there is just
And
brotherhood here. That's
You
amazing.
love what you do now.
Oh man, this is the coolest thing
It's
I've ever
got to
been
be so
involved with.
rewarding,
And it's not. It's selfishly, I'll say, yeah, I get something out of this.
You should, yeah.
I mean, I get the joy of just seeing what happens to others when they come in here, just like you experienced today. It's
Some people go through some of these traumatic incidents, and I'm not saying all of them, but I have heard and seen stories where they're just like, oh, it was just another day. Like, let's just go back to being normal. I mean,
it comes out.
yeah, it does. Okay. I don't know. Some people I feel like take it for granted. Like, dude, you just walked away from death. Like, do you realize how lucky you are?
You can push it away, and then I tried it. That's what I did, and that's what I think. That's what led to the anger, because I wouldn't face it.
Interesting.
Um,
Everybody's different, I guess. And
Yeah.
you learn that kind of stuff here, and you
That's so
find a
cool.
way to break it down and figure it out, right?
And it's such a cool, just the way he's everything's set up here. So it starts off, the round robin introduction, and you're getting glimpses of these stories of these people and who they are, and where they've served, what they've done, and then it kind of goes into like where you came with the box speech,
Yeah.
which is pretty freaking cool.
Oh, we walked in, I think, at the perfect time.
Yeah, that box speech is nutty. But then from there, as you notice, we break out to the stations. and where you're building your Kydex case or you get the artifact put in, but that gives the team a chance to talk to you a little bit.
Yeah.
And today was kind of high paced because the first end of it did take a little while. But what we'll do is I'm going to open up a little bit. We're going to make a little bit of connection, and then I'm going to open up. I'm going to share something with you, and that's going to make you feel at ease. So maybe you can open up. And some of the stories we've heard in here, I mean, are crazy.
There's very all awesome and amazing people, you know.
I mean, so the Night Stalkers, there's behind you is a shield with their insignia on it. So Night Stalkers, that's the Army special helicopter unit that takes in, whether it's DevGru, MARSOC, Delta, Green Beret, whoever. They have more flight hours under night vision than most pilots have under just regular vision. I mean, these guys are like awesome. They're the best of the best for pilots. And to have like one of those guys like pull me to the side, like, man, Johnny, I got to tell you a story after hearing that. And I'll never forget. He was like, man, so I was on an op and I was on the ground in a firefight. And I'm thinking, wait, dude, you're a helicopter. If you're on the ground in a firefight, that's probably not good.
No.
And that's where he was, and sharing that with me that, that in that firefight, he realized he was overrun. That like, all right, is it? I'm not going to make it. And then he was like, then I heard a voice, and that voice said, I'm going to get you out of this.
It's awesome.
Yeah, it is awesome. Considering everybody around him, none of them speak English.
Yeah, yeah, right.
So, and then he was in here building. Just so many stories there. It's just, man, that's what it is. It's about brotherhood here and sisterhood, and we have families come in and build shields. And Dom, and that's how I met Dom. Is he brought his son in to build a shield with with a Marine when his son, and it was like kind of like a rite of passage thing for those boys, and it was pretty powerful.
Well, listen, man, I want to help out with. I mean, I don't know. There's much I can do here physically, but I think I can help you guys out on just social media or bringing these people out on the water, or I don't know. I want to make sure we share this book. Where can people buy this book?
They can get it from Amazon.
Okay.
You can check it out, lostinthestringbook.com, and I'll make sure you get the link.
Is there probably a digital book too?
Yeah, there's a digital as well.
Cool. Awesome.
And again, now we're trying to get the stuff kind of finished up for the hardcover version, which is going to be, there's some change. I'm trying to clean that up a little bit in that one.
Okay.
And then I'm adding something that's not fairly, but majorly significant related to suicide that Samantha and I have kind of
that's awesome.
Experienced related to something that's given a lot of healing to like parents of those that have attempted it, or even those that have fallen through with it with their kids. And even there was a pastor that we were planning to go for me to speak at his church, and then we're praying over it. Next thing I know, during the prayer, he broke down because he realized that maybe that it's likely that this had like something to do with what happened when his brother ended his life. So it's man, I mean, it's crazy. God's using it in nutty ways, man, and it feels pretty good to be that vessel, because that's all I am.
Yeah. Keep doing what you're doing, man. Yeah. You if you don't think you're doing anything, don't worry, you are. You're making a difference, and I was super impressed today. We're gonna share more about this place, and I want to come back and follow up and see how everything's going and see how you're doing. Maybe take you fishing or whatever.
Yeah. Are you going to come up here and go fishing sometime? Come on.
We'll be back up here. We're coming up here. What do you call it? Well, first of all, the White Marlin tournament, and just north of here a little bit, there's those boat docking competitions. So
one of my old bosses is like all about that. Like he had a boat called Just One More, and he is like heavy into that boat docking stuff.
Yeah. So I'm gonna come up here and we're gonna partake in that.
That's pretty cool.
So, all right,
maybe
man.
You see some pylons get ripped out.
Oh yeah, I see that every day.
That's how you do, don't you?
Johnny, dude. Hey, listen, man. Thank you so much for having us here, and we'll keep the people that are listening and following us informed of what's going on. I'll add a link to everything, and if anybody else that's listening is going through any issues or you know, these kind of just reach out to even you personally. So
Not try to answer everybody. I know sometimes it gets a little hard. Like CBN, they did a video on it. You saw a little clip of it today, and man, when that thing, I tried my best to answer everybody.
Yeah.
You know, I figure if somebody's going to reach out to me, I want to do my best to get back to them. But then again, you know, Jimmy, that box. I mean, we gotta keep that box straight.
it's all good stuff.
That's
man.
right. It is good stuff.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much
Okay.
for doing this.
All right, cool. Thank
All right,
you.
man.